There's been some talk that government is going to scrap negative gearing, which again, for those who don't know what negative gearing is that government paying, using taxpayers' money obviously, investors in property who are losing money on that property. So they're offsetting their losses, and what these investors are hoping for is that the capital appreciation of the properties and the investments is going to go up. In the meantime, they're losing money, meaning that their repayments are larger than and expenses and loan repayments are larger than what they're getting in rent. Now, this next story, next video I just want to share with you is about the fundamentals that tell us about, and what do I know? Again, I'm just an observer like most others out there. Some get paid for trying to predict where the markets are going, but as far as I understand and as far as I can tell is that whenever there's a black swan event, something that changes the market, something that makes the market move rapidly up or down, is not normally what everybody expected. So what they're saying that is happening currently is that there's an oversupply of units, especially in Western Australia. Watch the next story. What they're saying is that that's going to have a flow-on effect to eastern coast of Australia, but my guess is that there's going to be something completely different out of left field that nobody could have seen, that changes the market, and in my opinion, and according to all of my research, it's going to change to negative.
Treasurer Scott Morrison conceded today that the housing market is getting away from people. He said buying a house in Australia is getting harder and harder, and capital city prices have grown more rapidly than the rest of the country. The Treasurer intends to push the states and territories to remove unnecessary land planning regulations to increase housing supply, but he won't consider any changes to controversial tax breaks like negative gearing.
The most significant thing you can do there is addressing the supply-demand imbalance. Population growth, economic growth, people getting jobs, dual income families, all of this is supporting rising demand. And it's important that the supply is able to keep up with that demand.
Meanwhile, CommSec's latest snapshot of the Australian economy shows New South Wales has maintained its top spot as Australia's highest performing state economy. Victoria and the ACT follow in second and third spots, then South Australia, the Northern Territory, Queensland and Tasmania. Western Australia, though, has fallen to the last spot as the end of the mining boom continues to hit the state hard. Just 2 years ago, WA was ranked number 1. The drop in economic fortunes is reflected in property prices, which have been sliding since 2014, and rental vacancies have just hit a new high as investors struggle with an apartment glut. There are warnings this could play out on the East Coast too. Clint Jasper reports from Perth.
As populations in Melbourne and Sydney swell, the exodus of workers is throwing the once booming Perth property market into reverse.
I actually left due to the downturn. The contract was over. They can't always replace your job, they transfer you across. We all understand that. It's not a stable environment, so I had to finish up.
In 2013, WA saw 10,000 people move west. This year, Brittany Crawford is one of 6,000 who've left for other states.
I found work within 4 days of being in Melbourne. Now 2 months later, I've just managed to score my dream job, so I'd find it relatively easy.
But at home, WA's post-mining boom economy has made life harder for Perth's leasing agents.
Look, it's become more difficult to find quality tenants, and we've had to carry out more inspections per property, for example. That's
a very different situation to the boom days.
During the mining boom, obviously, it was a case of being in an abnormal circumstance and only, conducting one viewing or even, lining a tenant up over remotely via a relocation agent.
Vacancy rates in the Perth metro area have risen 2% over the last 2 years. After dropping 9.5% since last year, Perth rents are now at their lowest level since 2011.
The May, June, July period has been probably the hardest market we've seen so far.
Tough times haven't dampened agents' hopes for a return to the boom years.
That may come again one day. It might not be for the next few years, but I think one day it will turn around and we will see that again.
Property professionals in Perth agree the apartment market has fared far worse than the housing market during the downturn.
We've had a lot of development of apartments in a city ring, and that's where the development sites have really gone from being, sort of feast to famine. They were red hot a couple of years ago, not so much in demand today.
Gavin Hegney believes the pain Perth property buyers have experienced is a sign of things to come on the east coast. Investment bank Morgan Stanley predicts by 2018 there'll be an excess of 100,000 dwellings nationally as a wave of apartment projects is completed.
Off-the-plan sales creates demand for two properties when the real demand is only one. So the people, when they move into the new apartment, have to move out of either rental accommodation or sell their existing home. And that's when you get the problem. That's what's coming in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane.
In those East Coast capitals, a recent survey revealed there's more cranes building apartments than in major United States cities. And with building activity in trouble in Perth, investors are trying to offload their units.
People are bailing out of their investment properties and saying, I'll just quit the investment property, I don't like this property investment anymore. So that usually spells we're near the bottom of the market. From here, we should see some hope.
Mate, I don't think the place could be any sharper than it is.
Yeah, it looks good, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Lawns look good, it looks pretty good.
After 10 years, Ron Campbell's selling his investment property. He's concerned that in a falling rental market, upcoming changes to the pension asset test will mean he'll be left with nothing to live on.
Yeah, what happens there is that, of course, the rental value drops, that there's a less income coming into your wages, and plus you've got higher water rates, shire rates, all those sort of things come into play, and your income is not enough to support you, especially going back to the 1st of January where I might have no income at all.
Nationally, Morgan Stanley is forecasting approvals for new apartments to halve over the coming 2 years. Recent Australian Bureau of Statistics data show building approvals dropped 120% in recent years, creating a worrying climate for West Australian builders.
Moving from an extraordinary high of nearly 32,000 dwelling starts, transitioning to below 20,000 this financial year has been a big challenge for a lot of builders to adjust to.
Today, the Treasurer pointed out the 7% drop in Perth property prices since the boom, a sign housing affordability is getting better in some Australian capitals.